Our next presenter is Naushaad Ebrahim from Science, if he is here.
Okay, so I created 3D lessons for our pharmacy students in the discipline of pharmaceutics. I'm Naushaad Ebrahim, so let me spend the next couple of minutes just to try to explain to you my journey from getting familiar with the 3D content process and how I've implemented it, and some of the things that I've learned in the process. So I think, as we all know, as a lecturer, it can be quite challenging at times to explain complex principles and equipment pieces in a conventional 2D manner. And even if we have photos or diagrams, it can be quite difficult. And I think even more so if you're on the other side of the lectern as the student to actually understand. So this journey started with an email from the CIECT office promoting this EON-XR 3D platform. I've always had an interest in technology, so combine it with my teaching was quite an exciting challenge. Initially, it was a bit difficult, but I think, as everybody mentioned prior, the excellent support from the CIECT office with Caroline and with Norina and the instructor Laurent to help me with this process in terms of familiarizing myself with this platform made these things quite easy. Now, the module in question for me is pharmaceutical technology, and it involves quite a bit of visualization, and a lot of times students can't actually comprehend what you're talking about, even though you're showing them a two-dimensional picture. So the 3D lessons that I created presented a visual 3D perspective of equipment and laboratory spaces and removing a potential barrier to learning. So let me just jump straight in terms of time. So this is an example of an asset that you can obtain on the 3D EON-XR 3D platform. So at the moment, obviously, it's in a 2D because we're showing you it to you in the form of a PowerPoint presentation. But the picture on the left is the raw asset that you can get. And once you open it up on the platform, it is in a 3D orientation. The picture on the right-hand side is essentially how I've gone about populating it. So you can see there's on the picture on the right-hand side is about 11 or 12 tags. And on these tags, you can actually now then add content. So if the student clicks on the tag, for example, it says the one that says a barrel, you can have audio to explain to them what the barrel is, what its function is. You can link PDFs to that particular tag. You can link YouTube videos to that. And essentially, at the end of the learning exercise, the student will know how to use a Bunsen burner in this example. So the student is able to orientate this in the 3D space once they're on the platform, and they can do it at their own pace. And what we also then do is, after they've gone through all these tags on the right-hand side, you can embed quizzes to test their understanding. Now, thus far, the feedback on this from the students have been positive, and also where we've actually implemented these tools, you actually see a difference in the marks as well. But what I thought was, at the time, even though the 3D platform has many generic assets, as in 3D lingo, an asset is essentially a picture, like this Bunsen burner. But for me to have received maximum benefit out of this, I realized that I needed to create my own content. And that's what, in fact, the journey that I did, in addition to utilizing the 3D and 360 assets on this 3D platform provided by the university, I created my own. And these assets, as an example here, this is something that I created from scratch. It's a pharmaceutical rotary drum filter used in the processing of raw pharmaceuticals. And the idea here was that I could now create content that's in line with my coursework, in line with my objectives, and present that to the students. And that is how they then receive much better or more efficient benefit from a 3D platform. And this also, once again, helped me quite a bit in them better understanding and visualizing what we are referring to. And this was a game changer in terms of being able to customize content, your own content, in line with your course objectives. And what I also found was that If I had not done that, it might not have been, been purely generic. So this is an example here of more content that I've created, just to give you an indication of what the 3D challenges are and the space that they can utilize. This is a pharmaceutical turbo thread dryer. Let me just play the video for you again. So what you are able to do here is, after I've designed this from scratch, you can now rotate, the student can rotate this and get a better visualization of the apparatus. So when you explain things to them, they have a better understanding. Also, you can tag it, as you can see. They can click the tags, gives them explanation of individual components. And what you can also do is you can synchronize it in that if you want them to do it in particular steps. So they go through all the steps 1 to 10, for example, and at the end of that, they have a quiz to test the understanding. That has also been majorly beneficial. And what is also important to understand here is that there was additional software that I had to familiarize myself with in order to design and create these 3D assets. What I then did was I understood, okay, this is a 3D platform, and can't I then translate this into my laboratory? And that's what I tried doing. So if I look at the next slide, this is an actual 360 photograph that I've taken with a 360 camera of our actual pharmaceutics laboratory. And the application here is that this will be now formed as a pre-practical tutorial for the students. So once again, it's in the picture here is 2D, but once they view it on the 3D platform from the university, it's in the 3D space, and they can orientate obviously left, right, top, bottom. And you can see once again there are tags. For example, is a Bunsen burner. They click on the Bunsen burner to tell them how to utilize the Bunsen burner. You can have various tags to explain GMP, GLP to them. So they familiarize this virtual space. When they come into the lab, it will be in the same lab that they've experienced online. It makes things much easier when they come to do the practical and the interpretation and understanding of the practical in question. So just a couple of points in terms of what worked. I think what's important here is investing the time. In terms of familiarizing you with the software is important. Don't be afraid to explore various software packages. University has some licenses for example, Adobe Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, and various other software packages for creating your content. Hardware is also important. The more higher spec your hardware, the better. A tablet is a big advantage. I utilized an iPad Pro with a pencil, and that helped a lot with the creation of content. Another big lesson here is to do it yourself. I think sometimes there are certain departments where you can ask them to create the 3D content for you, but sometimes things can get lost in translation, a lot of back and forth, and that can be time consuming. So the big lesson for me here is, and I've empowered myself to do this process from the start to the finish, and I think that's the most beneficial. Maybe just also to mention what's in the works. We are currently in collaboration with a pharmaceutical company to actually acquire 3D assets and virtual tours of the facility, of the laboratories, of the specialized large-scale industrial equipment through our university's technology transfer office with Monique and with Aisha. We've already set up an MOA. The MOA is currently sitting with industry, and we're waiting their feedback. So we're excited to get going with creation of content in industry. And this is very useful. For us, for example, it's not possible for all our students to have maximum exposure in industry based on the nature of being a private entity. And this will definitely help us complement work integrated and work-based learning to make the transition from a classroom setting to the pharmaceutical work environment much easier. And in my last slide here is just some reflection. I think it's important to note hardware and software is important. Dr. Stoltenkamp mentioned earlier that blended learning and technology in teaching practice is here to stay. And I think it's important for departmental management and university management to also realize that. Maybe they have, but I think they need to invest more in supplying more software and more software licenses, more hardware, making maybe tablets available to staff for us to embrace this technology going forward. And as everybody's mentioned earlier, there's no going back now, and we need more investment in this. The second important point, the second last point, is I think creating your own 3D content is key. If you are able to create 3D assets and share it with the students online in that 3D space and align it to your coursework, that is essentially what you want. That's where you're going to get the most benefit out of this. And it's going to take a bit of extra time. And that ties into the last point. Don't be reluctant to invest in the time. The reward is exponential. And ultimately, it breaks down the barriers, and it will allow us to create our world-class UWC graduates that we all strive for. Thank you.